Hi everyone, this is NLP Corgi. Today's deep dive is about the paper from OpenMOS Thinking with Video, evaluating Sora 2 on Video ThinkBench. Chain of thought reasoning turned large language models into much better problem solvers by letting them think step by step in text. More recently, vision language models started to think with images, drawing intermediate diagrams to help themselves reason. But both of these approaches are fundamentally static. They freeze time into single snapshots and still treat vision and language as separate channels. This paper argues for a new paradigm, thinking with video, where a model reasons by generating a whole evolving sequence of frames, unifying text and visuals over time. Thinking with video means using a video generation model itself as the reasoning engine. Instead of just outputting a final answer, the model literally draws diagrams, writes intermediate steps on the screen, and speaks its thoughts out loud across a short clip. The time dimension lets it represent dynamic processes like moving a ray of light or filling in a maze path, not just static before and after states. And because the same model controls both visuals and text inside the video, vision and language are no longer separate modalities. They're fused into one continuous reasoning medium. The central character in this paper is Sora 2, a high-capacity video generation model. The authors don't just use it for pretty clips, they treat it as a general reasoning system. To test this idea, they build a new benchmark called Video ThinkBench. It's designed specifically to probe reasoning that unfolds over time in video. The benchmark includes both vision-centric tasks, where the model has to draw or manipulate visual objects, and text-centric tasks, where it has to solve math or knowledge problems but still express its reasoning inside a video. Video ThinkBench is organized into two big families. Vision-centric tasks focus on spatial reasoning and pattern discovery, things like eyeballing geometry, solving visual puzzles, or inferring abstract grid transformations. Text-centric tasks come from math and general knowledge benchmarks. But the twist is that Sora 2 must show its solution process inside the video, writing steps on a virtual board and speaking the answer. This setup lets the authors evaluate how well a single video model can handle both visual and textual reasoning in a unified way. On the vision side, Sora 2 faces four main types of challenges. Eyeballing puzzles ask it to estimate geometric quantities, like where a reflected ray will pass through, by drawing directly on the image. Visual puzzles require it to fill regions with the right colors, or draw the correct shapes based on patterns. ArcAGI 2 pushes it to infer abstract rules from example input-output grids, and then generate the correct output grid for a new case. And Maze tasks test whether it can plan and draw a valid path between 2 points without crossing walls. All of this has to be done through video generation alone. Eyeballing puzzles are a key part of the benchmark. The authors designed 21 different puzzle types with over 1,000 automatically graded samples. Each puzzle asks Sora 2 to construct either a point, a line, or a shape. For example, drawing the path of a reflected ray or marking the midpoint of a segment. The underlying dataset is multiple choice, but Sora 2 is not shown the options. It just gets the image and a natural language prompt. To score it, the authors look at three signals: what it says in the audio, what appears in the final frame, and a majority vote across multiple frames to see where it actually drew. To understand how good Sora 2 really is at eyeballing, the authors compare it to three strong vision language models. They measure accuracy in several ways: whether Sora 2 verbally names the right option, whether its final frame places the red dot or line correctly, and whether a majority of frames agree on the correct location. The tasks are grouped by whether they require constructing a point, a line, or a shape. Across these categories, Sora 2 is generally competitive with, and sometimes better than, dedicated vision language models, even though it's reasoning purely through video generation. Another vision-centric component is a set of visual puzzles adapted from the Puzzle VQA benchmark. Here, Sora 2 has to perform inductive reasoning over images. In color-filling tasks, it must decide which color belongs in a marked region based on surrounding patterns. In shape-drawing tasks, it has to draw the correct shape that completes a pattern. Vision language baselines are given multiple choice options, so they only need to pick the right answer. Sora 2, by contrast, must actually generate the correct drawing in the video, which is a stricter and more realistic test of visual reasoning. The benchmark also includes two particularly challenging visual tasks. ArcAGI 2 is designed to test few-shot inductive reasoning. Sora 2 sees several example input-output grid pairs, then must infer the underlying transformation rule and draw the correct output grid for a new input. The authors not only auto-grade these outputs, but also manually inspect 100 cases, categorizing them by how complete and correct the generated grids are. For mazes, Sora 2 is asked to draw a red path between 2 points without touching walls. It can handle simple square mazes, but more complex maze structures still defeat it, highlighting current limits in spatial planning. On the text-centric side, the authors sample problems from well-known reasoning benchmarks like GSM 8K, Math 500, IME, GPQA, MMMU, and others. Each problem is given to Sora 2 as a text prompt plus a reference image that shows the entire question. Sora 2 then has to solve the problem inside the video. It writes out its reasoning steps on screen and speaks the final answer. For evaluation, the last frame is extracted to read the written answer, and the audio is transcribed to capture the spoken answer. These two channels are scored independently, which lets the authors see how consistent and reliable Sora 2's text-centric reasoning really is. So how well does Sora 2 actually reason about text-heavy problems? On a subset of the math benchmark, it reaches about 92% accuracy, and on MMMU, a challenging multimodal benchmark, it scores around 75.5%. When compared to state-of-the-art vision language models, Sora 2 is broadly competitive on GSM 8K, Math 500, Math Vista, and MMBench, especially when you look at the audio channel. However, its performance drops on more difficult datasets like AIM, GPQA, and MMMU, suggesting that truly expert-level reasoning is still out of reach. The authors carefully track how often the video answer is correct, how often the audio is correct, and how often both agree. One concern with any reasoning benchmark is data leakage. Maybe the model has simply memorized training problems. To probe this, the authors generate derived versions of math problems by changing the numerical values while keeping the structure similar. They then compare Sora 2's accuracy on the original and modified versions. The performance stays consistent across these variants, which argues against simple memorization and supports the idea that Sora 2 is performing genuine text-centric reasoning, at least for these tasks. The authors also ask a deeper question. Where does Sora 2's impressive text reasoning actually come from? They study another system, WAN 2.5, that includes a separate prompt rewriter model. When this rewriter is disabled, WAN 2.5's reasoning performance on text-centric tasks almost collapses. This suggests that the rewriter is doing most of the intellectual heavy lifting, and the video generator is mainly rendering the result. By analogy, the authors hypothesize that Sora 2 may also rely on a powerful, possibly hidden, prompt rewriting or language reasoning module upstream of the video generation component. Beyond single-shot answers, the authors explore two classic techniques from language models, self-consistency and in-context learning. For self-consistency, they let Sora 2 generate several videos for the same problem and then vote on the most common answer. This boosts accuracy on some tasks, especially where individual runs are noisy. For ArcAGI 2, they compare using all example pairs versus just one example. Having more examples in the prompt clearly helps, indicating that Sora 2 exhibits in-context learning behavior, even though its output is a video rather than plain text. Putting everything together, the results show that video generation models like Sora 2 can do more than just create realistic clips. They can reason by drawing diagrams, writing equations, and speaking answers, all within a single temporal sequence. On many benchmarks, Sora 2 is competitive with state-of-the-art vision language models, especially when we look at its audio-based answers. The video format itself is a powerful unifying medium. It naturally blends text and vision and captures dynamic processes. The authors argue that thinking with video is a promising new paradigm for unified multimodal reasoning. There are important caveats. Sora 2 is not open source, so the authors can only infer its internal structure from behavior. Most of the analysis is centered on this single proprietary model, which limits generality. Looking ahead, they plan to extend Video ThinkBench to more video generation systems, especially open source ones, to better understand how reasoning emerges. They also propose training directions, scaling up verifiable video tasks, and using reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards to sharpen reasoning, and even converting text corpora into video-like training data. For example, simulating handwriting word by word, so that video models can acquire world knowledge and language skills in a unified, multimodal way.